Okay, it's Friday, March 10th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. And today we end up with another two down red bar that closed near the lows of the session and reached some important targets that we'll go over in a second. On the weekly chart, big weekly outside bar to the downside, big red bar, made a higher high and a lower low. And I'll show you why generally after we kind of made that lower low yesterday, but the reason we got continuation to some key targets was because we had some time frame continuity on the monthly chart. And on the monthly chart here, you could see after yesterday's big move down, that gave us a two down month. So now, even though we broadened out on a weekly time frame, that also was in sync with a new monthly expansion, and we still have a way to go to get there. So that's why when you see an expansion on a shorter time frame, if you look at the longer time frame, you can tell if we're going to pause there and maybe start back up the other way, or if we're now possibly working to higher time frame broadening, which we're doing in this case. It's the same reason we didn't continue higher on this three bar to the upside. Basically, we were not in line with the up. At that point, we had only gotten to maybe the halfway point of the prior month, so we didn't confirm anything on the monthly chart. And then as soon as we got that first day of the week red, and we had an open right here at the yellow line, as long as we stayed below that all week long, we were biased to the downside. Also, I just thought I'd point out this week looks very much like, almost exactly like, let me go back to where it was here, this week right here. Where we have our outside bar to the downside, and then there are these targets way below that we're targeting. And if with a lot of pivots kind of lining up, if I go back on the chart during this time period on the monthly chart, this was the same type of thing, a two down month that started, and we expanded all the way towards those lows. Same thing here, 2 month go down, and we're expanding likely all the way to these lows now. So if you look at the two comparisons, here's the weekly outside bar that continued lower, here's the weekly outside bar, and you can see all kinds of targets down there that we're likely hitting, but we'll get into that next week. Now, in terms of today's trading, I could see that it was tricky, but if I'll go over the way I interpreted it, and the way there were a couple of interpretations. I discussed on my open video how it was a wide opening range. I didn't know for sure if you'd get the momentum down after this, and but we were definitely biased to the downside. So if we look at the 15-minute chart and the structure, the very first bar started. Now, first of all, at the time I made the video, we were up near the highs of the day, pre-market range, and then the open was happening, we were coming down. So we were pretty, likely we were going to take out those pre-market lows at that point. The real aggressive way to play this, I did not do it. If you look at the 5-minute chart, this is how I would have done it if I was going to be patient and wait. But if I wanted to be aggressive, I would have got in on this 5-minute break, looking for that 15-minute bar to kind of expand and take out that pre-market low, which is this first blue line. That would have been the aggressive way to play it, and you could have done that, but I didn't do that. Sometimes I take a 5-minute aggressive trade. Again, I was willing to wait. Then it kind of came down, big red bar. The second bar right here started out, I didn't want to take that follow-through trade. To me, again, I was being patient. I detected a big wide range. I suspected a little chop might come in after such a big day down, and almost immediately we came down and started back up again and had this little bit of a hammer bar right below, taking out some stops here at the pre-market lows. If you wanted to take that trade, I guess you could have either maybe taken a small loss on this third bar. Maybe you would have hung in there for 2 bars and then taken a small loss here. It's possible you could have taken that and taken a small loss if you just tried to, thought you'd get a lot of continuation right out of the gates on this first bar. So that's acceptable to take a small loss if that happens. I didn't particularly do that. Then I started watching. I still had the downward bias. Like I said, once we expanded here, once the monthly chart was down, I knew there were targets down here that were likely going to be taken out, and I was patient to kind of stay, on the short side and wait for a good setup. Now it came up here. once it made this little move here, I kind of suspected that was it and we were going to be heading lower, but I also didn't trade that. If you wanted to do it, you could have, but we didn't at that point reach the pre-market highs. And at that point, we broke through the first bar high, and I wasn't sure, maybe we just pause. And if we did pause and then start back up, you could have gotten right out maybe with another small loss. But again, that's not even a trade you have to take. And I didn't take it either. And then what happened was once we got the two down, it came down strong all the way down here. That's where I shot a video and bought puts into this consolidation area right here, expecting the lows of the day to be taken out and then expecting, these two targets to be taken out. They were very clear on the chart if you go back. And that's kind of exactly what happened. And then we kind of just, you can see here we took out the two blue lines and then we kind of just went sideways for the rest of the day. So again, my interpretation was to not do anything early. I could have aggressively gotten short here. My intuition said to do it, but I just didn't do it. I just wanted to see. I wasn't positive, but once it came down strong, at that point, we were now testing those. Everything to me is testing intraday highs and lows once we start the initial move of the day. And obviously, we were way below the midpoint of the prior day. So I was expecting, some rollover to the downside. So anyway, I happened to buy puts right in here and then was able to take gains on a base hit down to those targets. And it was a good trade to the short side. Also, NVIDIA also set up the same way, and I bought some puts there. So I was patient today. You didn't have to, if you weren't and you took a small loss here, you had an opportunity for a secondary entry here to make it back. Let's put it that way. But the bias was clearly the downside. These targets were clear, in sight, and we ended up getting there. And now we just kind of come into next week. Obviously, I see some clear targets down here. Same way when we came down here, I saw these clear targets. It's just a matter of what kind of week unfolds next week to get there. We're going to look at the opening price of the week the same way we look at the opening price of this week. Maybe we start up next week on Monday and we start green, and you can't really get too excited getting short until we get some kind of a reversal that not only triggers something on the daily chart, but also then, looks to turn the weekly chart back to red. So it just depends how things open next week. There's no reason we can't just continue down. You can see here, you can get a lot of bars in a row on the downside once things floodgates open up. So, we're a little bit of exhaustion risk, but we're also just at the beginning of this monthly, move to the downside here. So, there might be some choppiness, kind of like, that's the way the market does price discovery. It kind of might move up, take out some highs along the way. Maybe we've come down, maybe we'll chop around here, take out some highs, but eventually there's high probability we should be rolling over to the downside and reaching those targets, and there should be great opportunities, on the short side here. This is a very good, environment right now, and we'll just have to see, if it continues next week.